Did it work? Came in the wrong way. That looks promising. Oh, I hear my screen. There you go. There we go. I better hear this one as well. There it is. Okay, let me pop up some Discord. Here, some link. Forward. Disable stream mode, then forward. Okay, close my notepad. Inventory. Okay. So that's the questionable one. Hello everyone. Give me one quick second. I'm just trying to get all the people. Lost a few along the way. So we just need to write that one up. There we go. Send those out, and we are good to go. Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm doing well. We're all good here. Let me just get onto my stream, make sure I'm looking at everything right. My camera's right. My BRB screen is back. Why is my BRB screen? I am speaking. Why are you on? Give me a second. That isn't what's supposed to happen. I am speaking. Why are you triggering at all? It's always something, you know. These are supposed to be silent BRBs. These are supposed to be when I'm not talking. I think I should be able to hit this one, and it should be, there we go, we're back. Hey guys. And let me just select this screen real quick on the YouTube side so that I know everything's working. Hey Saint Cyr, how are you doing? Hope you're having a texture day. I'm having a pretty good day. Cannot complain at all. We're gonna review the Game Jam game with your music in it. We're gonna look at the code, we're gonna look at the design, we're gonna see how all that works together. It's really weird to have my screen here with my new setup because like everything focus wise is this way, and like my little webcam to make sure I'm viewing the right one is there. I guess I could go here and see that my desktop screen and my desktop camera's on, but it's all fine. Before we get into that, why is my BRB screen back? Give me 1 second, guys. My BRB screen should not be triggering like that. Where in the world? Voice control, command, settings. Oh, the new setup changed everything. Okay, so now it should trigger eventually. There you go. So the issue was my new mic. I moved all these cords and stuff, and my mic was not the mic I speak to when it is. So it couldn't figure out who I was talking to. But I hope you're having a good day and everything. So before we begin, I was updating Notepad++ because I was doing some things and found a interesting CVE. If you have Notepad++, I highly recommend updating your it has a small vulnerability with a huge impact, but I think it will be very valuable for all developers to understand what this vulnerability is, in hopes that if you're developing your own stuff, you know that you should, how to code better. Okay, so with that, I'm going to zoom in and we're going to scroll down a little bit. Okay, so quick. What is Notepad++? It's a free open source code editor / Notepad. If you've ever used Notepad, you've used a program like Notepad++. However, it recently had a vulnerability, which it just recently, at least for me, I got notified that there's a patch for that and everything. So I'm going to quickly explain what this vulnerability is and everything. I really love Cyberproof's analytics of this. That's why we're on here. So basically, the vulnerability comes with the reg svr32.exe, which is a registry service program which allows Notepad++ to adjust registries. In this specific case, what was happening is when Notepad++ would try to do an install or uninstall, it could not identify the right registry SVR32. And because of that, I could be a bad actor, dump my own little reg SVR32 in a directory, and Notepad++ will run it with above privilege users. So basically, you might say, hey, I am allowed to only do so much. Well, Notepad++ will have a little bit more permissions, because it's an application, to do more things. What this will allow is me to slide my little program that's not allowed to do many things into an application that is allowed to do many things, which allows it to do things it shouldn't be able to do. So what actually is the underlying issue is when Notepad++ installs and or uninstalls, it runs this following code, which roughly inherits to, hey, run reg svr32 as a user under this permissions for the Notepad++ shell _1.dll. Don't need to know a lot about that. The key factor in what caused this is they just said, hey, Windows, there's a reg svr32 somewhere on the computer. Please just run it using these permissions. And the issue with this is what they say here is Windows starts that search for where regs svr32 is in the current directory which it is executing that script on, which would be the Notepad++ install directory. Which means if I'm a bad actor and I'm able to put a fake bad acting regex svr32 inside that directory, you're going to run it whenever Notepad++ installs or uninstalls. It's just going to run that code and believe that it's running the right one. So what should you fix to do that if you're a developer? Specify where your code should be getting that thing. In this case, it's not the greatest. I would say there are some risk factors in this as well, but it's using the environmental directory sysdir, which is short for system directory, and reg svr32.exe. And what that basically says is, hey, Windows, here's where you should find it. It should be in whatever you consider the system directory on this system, and it should be a direct child of that directory. And what that ensures is, generally, assuming that other vulnerabilities did not take in place beforehand, the system directory is going to be like your Windows 32 file and all the stuff that becomes memes on the internet about don't delete. okay? And that file generally has additional permissions compared to other directories on your system, such as install, uninstall, deletion, and stuff like that, which ensures that the reg svr32.exe should be the proper, clean authority of it. So that is this. Like I said, I saw it while booting up the stream, and I thought it'd be a good thing to bring up because I know a lot of developers who do, especially in like prototyping code, just go, hey, I want it here. I know there's a program somewhere, just run it. And this is a good example of why that could be problematic. Luckily, I think my quick look through it didn't look like there was any use of this in the wild. There was no actual execution vulnerabilities, but this could have easily been a very bad one in the sense that Notepad++ is a vastly used program for developers and stuff like that, which means the systems it runs on could have access to very important other software and stuff like that, which makes it easily a spreadable exploit. Here's some proof of concepts and all of that, and direct detection strategies. If you're somebody who's doing security protection, here's the little scripts you can run to identify if your thing is at it, and it also gives some exploit how to identify if somebody was trying to exploit it and stuff like that. Really good detailed explanation. Again, the core thing for average users is you should just update your software. They have fixed it. It's in the 8.82.2 or higher, which I think 8.8.2 is the highest at this point. If you have issues like this, then you should monitor and do other things like that. If you're not a security person, I'm not going to get really deep in that, but somebody who should know that should be able to help you. And or you should have up-to-date antivirus and other software that has that code in. I'm just going to post this link so that if anyone wants to deep read into it, they can, but for the time being, it's pretty good. So with that, let's get into the important thing. Is I joined a game jam. I joined a game jam about a month ago. I think it says somewhere. No, it doesn't say here, but it was about a month ago. And I want to do a retrospective, a code review, because I got. Can I see here? Yes. I don't think I'm logged in. Yeah, I'm not logged in. So I got 42nd overall, and out of 66, which generally isn't a considered good success, but every step in development can be counted as a win. Being able to complete a game, that's great. Being able to take that game and review it like we're going to do now and figure out things we could improve, things we can make better, will make only games greater, better. So, only future games better. So, that's it. And that's pretty much it. So, let's jump into the game real quick, just so that we have some context, please. There we go. So this is the game. It was a pretty simple, pretty simple little climbing game where the objective is to get to the top of the tower in a short period of time. There's many different routes. I'm going to try to do this route. Nope, I failed at that. Let's see if I can do that again. Whoop. There we go. And it kind of goes from somewhat realistic environments like planes and lands and towers, to more abstract environments. Oop. Come on. Oh my gosh, it's been a while since I played this. I'm actually pretty good, but it's been a while. There we go. Nope. But yeah, we made it where it's abstract. You can jump to splits and stuff like that. Saint Cyr made the music. And yeah, I really liked it. I think the overall game was a success in my opinion, in the sense of like the mechanics and all of that I enjoyed. There's areas where like even now I don't have like a drop shadow. That would have been a nice little feature for the guy, so that it'd be easier to identify where I am at any given time. But as I said, we kind of get into abstract things like pizzas and stuff and all this. It is linked in the pinned message. You can play in your browser as well as executable for Windows. And you have a high score system at the end, which you can try to get the high score of. So like that, and then you can type in your name and see the high scores. So we return to menu. We also have an options menu, which allows us to change sound and all that. You can view the high scores. You should be able to view the high scores. I don't know why the high scores. Yeah, there you go. It just took a little while. You can view the high scores and see how everyone's doing and where everyone is. You can view the credits. The credits have links to the various places, and you can quit the game. We're not going to do that because I had to change a couple of things before doing this video, so I just wanted to make sure I have that. So with that, let's get into some of the design and some of the code. I'm just going to close out of everything, and we're just going to act like this is a new project that I've never seen before, and kind of comment on every little design choice I've ever made, hate myself, and we'll make it a great video. So let's open up, let's grab the fire system first. Can I please make this for you? Thank you. So, okay. I can't zoom in on the fire system, but we'll make it like that and do something like that. That should be good. Okay. So first things first, as you can see, I kind of started with really good photo management stuff. And then as you can see, near the end of the game jam, I just started kind of throwing stuff together. But we have a couple of key points here, or a couple of negative points. First, throwing things together like this sucks in the thing of, if I'm a new person who's never seen this project before, and I open this folder, which is basically the home folder directory, I cannot tell you which file is the game and where in that file is the actual starting point of the game code. Since I created this, I know the Word file is the starting point. But beyond that, there's no way to tell this, okay? So that's problematic. Let's go into add-ons real quick. Okay, and add-ons are fine. We have 3 add-on features. We have a plugin I use quite often, the GD script input field. what that ultimately allows is being able to type GD script down here and executing it relatively in live. I love that because I come from a Python. My Python is my preferred language. And one of the things I love is being able to rapidly test and development code. With that, we have guide, which is a new thing I added to this to this game itself. Guide is a input management system, and what it allows you to do is basically create contextual inputs that you can switch between throughout the game. I loved it. I will most likely use this plugin many more times. Then we had a plugin I want to say St. Cyr and I started with when we were adding music, but there was a couple of hiccups here and there. But basically, it's Orvaneria's audio includer, which basically allows you to have sound effects with context of like a wall in front of you, you can't hear through it and stuff like that. So that's all fine. Animations, we had basically 4 FBX files that build up the animation. We're getting to that once we get into the character and stuff. Inputs, I think I broke this out beautifully. You have your actions, which are the themes of the actual movement you're providing, the user is providing. And then we have mappings, which actually takes those movements and carries them into the actual game ward based on a contextual thing, such as ward or ward play. Models, again, this was kind of just throwing them in. I think all of these are FBX. I have a new system in my current games that would make this so much faster, but at this point, this was the fastest I could do, and it was pretty good. Just loading them in, drag and drop. Nice place to have them. Nodes. So nodes are where I start getting a little bit more complicated, in the sense that these are where various code environments are. As you can see, most of them are actual scenes, TSCNs, but we also have a script here. I think all of the rest are scenes. So yeah, we have just this random script. That's not great practice either. And then we have environments, which all of these were TSCNs. They could have been modified and possibly done better, but we're getting into that as well. Scripts, not great in the organization side. It's just a folder filled with these with not real context, but we'll see that. And then textures. Generally, when I grab textures, I just grab what I am given and shove them in. It'd be nice to have a little bit more context, such as what package these came from. So like these came from the military ones, but this came from city, this came from dungeons, and so on and so forth. So that would have been a better implementation. Okay, so we've kind of destroyed my file management system. Great. Now let's get into the actual code. So like I said, this isn't great organized because I don't know where to begin. But luckily, since I developed this, I know the code somewhat. So we have ward. We're getting to that a little bit, and we'll also grab the script. Okay, so we grabbed an environment. I think I tried to change some things back in the day around the environment. I know I changed like what the sky looked like. 1 second. Wait a second. Okay. Sorry. I changed what the sky looked like. I know halfway through the development of this game jam, I wanted to have a dynamic sky, and I quickly learned a lesson that I think is really important. If you're doing anything with sky or your directional light, to do that very early in development, because as I started mucking around trying to make a dynamic light system that would go over the 24 hours, I kept running into bigger and bigger problems of like the lighting not looking right with everything, and it just became a nightmare. And ultimately, that's where I just was like, okay, here's the bare minimum. I like how it looks. We're done. So I think that's pretty much what I did with the sky. Changed a little bit of the lighting to try to get that going. Changed the thermal, and that's that. So it didn't do too much with the environment. Directional light, we changed the rotation just to get better angles of shadows. Turn shadows on, of course, that's easy. And that was pretty much it. Apparently I adjusted the scale, but I don't see that. So then we get into some of the chaos here. So the first chaos is this map. I wanted a map that the player could theoretically explore in pretty much any direction without the risk of them falling off the map. So yeah. Yeah, it wasn't great. Some of this is organized in like good portions, but in the reality of it, this should have been a multi-mesh. At least portions of it should have been a multi-mesh, stored away and never talk to anyone ever again. So the first thing is there's this fake floor that I have so that everyone just walks. This caused problematics when implementing the actual environment. Let me just make this bigger. So, as you can see, there are places in the environment like here and here that go lower than the floor. And there's also places like here and over here that go above the floor. Which means, since the floor is the only physical thing the player can land on, the player can go, their feet can slip under the ground and over the ground. I don't really know how I would have easily cleaned this up. Ooh, sorry. But that was a real problem. I guess more time mesh and a little bit more time to build up a collision layer on that multi-mesh would have done wonders, but I just didn't have the time. It was a game jam game, so flat board, which is literally the same floor that I did on the test level when I was first developing. So talking about that, these boxes, let's see, can I put them? Yeah, these three boxes here are the first few to see how climbing and stuff would work, and I just kept them in. This is really kind of the game jam aspect of like areas of game jams can be very janky because it's acceptable. If this was a full release, they shouldn't be there, but that's not really the big issue. So now we get into static bodies. First one is this plane, which I had to build an entire static body structure on. It was one of the first big things I added into it. And as you can see, this is the collision layer that I added. But if you see, it's not all one collision layer. It's a bunch of collision layers. So like the door right there, that's how I turn on and off the door. I don't know how to necessarily have made that better. So that's something we should kind of look into, is when I'm importing big assets like the transportation plane, how do I import it in such a way that I can actually see what components are and how to keep those components together? a lot of little issues around that kind of occurred when it came to like opening up these doors. Is I didn't realize that these doors were separate. So when coming up with a static body, this point that was used to rotate, I think it was in local space, yeah. Used to open and close this door, was off at the very front of the plane. I had to like piece it together to get it back in the position I wanted. So that could have been done a lot better. So transportation plane, definitely a big project and need to be looked into a little bit. Hopefully I've come up with a script that lets me import FBXs easier. Hopefully I can test it on this plane and see how that works. With that, we had a static body, that's fine. This guy, this was a massive node that basically just collected all the missile elements. So, as you can, I hate navigating there. As you can see, we have like a bunch of little missiles you can climb on, and I literally just grab them and just dump them in here. This would have been a really good use of the multi-mesh if I really thought about it, because like there has to be, and maybe you guys can suggest it or whatever, but there has to be a way to, let's just grab this one and make sure an editable. There has to be a way to grab a bunch of meshes, build a collider off the multi-mesh, and then use that collider to build the static. That would have been better. Again, this isn't the greatest in the sense of it's a game jam game, so it's rather quick. But if we did that and it didn't have any other ramification issues, that would have easily saved a lot of draws in that sense. Now, why would you want to have it broken up this way? Is it does allow calling and occlusion, so that if I can't see Mr. 12, it actually won't even try to draw it. Where if I have a multi-mesh, I believe as long as any single part of that multi-mesh is seen, all the multi-mesh is seen. So then we started adding these construction wheels. These were interesting. They have their own little script we'll get into later, which helps them spin. We added some pizzas right here that also have a script to spin. And then we have this clock tower thing that also spins. With that, where did we add the clock? Give me a second. Yeah, where is that? So that is within this. This could have been named a lot better as well. Really, it's a lot of props I kind of threw in one node to hoard them, but it shouldn't have been that way. It should have been a much more organized fashion, building up environments, and I should study that. The canvas layer I actually liked very much. So you can't see the canvas layer here because it's not in 3D. So let's jump into 2D. And this is the canvas layer. And one of the reasons I have it on a canvas layer is it kind of allows me to change draw order. Luckily, I didn't need to do that. But if we were actually planning to do a proper pause menu and stuff like that, where you might have like the HUD and then the pause menu, should do it this way, the HUD and then the pause menu. You might want the HUD to still show up, but you want the pause menu to take a higher canvas layer, and you don't care where it shows up in the tree. In this case, we cared a lot about where it showed up in the tree. So like, if I turn the debugger on, the debugger would always show up at the back, I believe. Let me open up like the option menu. Yeah. Nope. Come on. Yeah, so this would have been the last layer to be seen. Really, the debugger should have been one of the first layers to see, especially while debugging my own code. The action debugger came a package with the guide plugin, so it didn't change it too much, I don't think. But we'll get into that just to make sure. Then we had the HUD, which I really like this portion of the HUD. So when we get into that, that will be a cool thing to look into. We had the start menu, relatively simple, just a bunch of buttons that spun up and spun down things. Which I think the Word script managed. We had the options, again, relatively simple. I think I coded up some aspect of the sliders having their own script, maybe, or they had their own callback. I thought I had a script on it. Maybe it was a different game in the last while, but yeah. So this actually went pretty well. I liked that there was like an easy way to hook it up. We'll see if we can find that. The high score system, that was an experimenter that flew beautifully, flying colors, that allowed me to use Google Docs and Google Forms to basically make an online high score system with very little latency and stuff, and no cost to me, which is great for a game jam game. So that turned out beautiful. We'll hit that up definitely. The score system was relatively simple. I think the only issue was turning it on and off at the right time. Pause menu, again, relatively simple, especially since all of them were here anyways. It was just making them visible at the right time. And the credits were kind of hand jammed at the end. It could have been better. So let's go into 3D. We have Gold Cloud, which is this giant noise map texture, which I don't think I'm going to be... Oh, there we go. Which I had slightly spinning. Really, the script on that wasn't super impressive, but the script that decided how high that was really nice, because I wanted it where the highest point would always be reachable, and that would always be the goal point. So I had to have some way of dynamically adjusting that, and that has definitely got imported into my new projects. I think the player script was relatively traditional. No. So we're getting to the player script as well when that time comes. Environment, what was the environment? Oh, the environment was the actual ground layers. This was kind of a mess where I just kind of created a bunch of them and then just shuffled them about and then threw mountains around it. Again, not the worst, but definitely could have been better with a more time mesh. And then the audio stream player. This had a lot of headaches in development, and we just kind of settled with it playing in the background like you can hear now. So with that, let's get into some of the scripts. So, Word. This is a classical blob. It should have been a very thin down, just manager going like, hey, this is what I received. I'm going to call you, you, and you to do things appropriately in the right order. And it kind of just blew up into just do everything. Very bad anti-pattern, the blob. So refactoring it would have been taking a lot of these portions and ripping them out. Can I? Yeah, I can zoom in. We'll get into here. Okay, so extend Node 3D, that's fine. This is the first thing that should have indicated this was a blob. So like a couple of this, like where it says canvas layer here, easy break. Have the canvas layer be a proper canvas layer and manages the canvas. The ward should not. Think of the ward like game. The game shouldn't manage the canvas. The game should be going, hey, I have a signal that we are going into the start menu. Canvas, please load up the start menu. And or other things. In reality, the ward shouldn't even know about the canvas level. It should literally be a separate entity that has its own signals, and at best, the ward signals, hey, the player hit the wind point, canvas, please draw the wind. But I didn't do it that way. So that's a clear failure. If I remember right, the map, what did we do with map? Did we even use map? Yes, we used map for the cloud sides. Yep, okay. So that's somewhat important. Gold clouds, again, this kind of breaks into, if this was a proper game, there would have been incremental layers to this game, which means the start menu would not have been the game itself. And as such, they should be separate entities and stuff. Another thing that I'm using in my current game is having buttons in the editor that allows me to click and immediately go, hey, run this code and store it away. Because what the gold clouds basically does is determines how high the cloud should be to count as the end of the game. But the issue with that is it really doesn't need to run every time you boot the game up. It really only needs to run when I build anything to the level to make the clouds go high. High score viewer, that's part of the canvas layer. All that should have been canvas layer, and that's pretty much it. So if we were to do this proper, like that R goes away, this R goes away, this kind of could stay, but in reality it should be with the quote-unquote level of the game. So that even goes away, and already that cleans up a lot of code. But we didn't do it that way, so... ward player mapping and ward mapping. Again, these two things should be on two separate levels, because the ward mapping, which for now would be like the main game mapping. Let's open up the node actually to show you that one. So, hey, 45 gun, or it's all fine. So let's go into the ward mapping. I have to actually go into the file manager, and I don't like this view of my file manager. So we go into mappings and ward. So literally, all the ward mapping does is a way to lock the mouse to the screen and have buttons to unlock it. This should not have been in the game. This should have been something that the main menu would have opened up if you wanted. Possibly added to the game ward. So maybe that should have been. Okay, fine. But definitely the ward player, which actually was how to move the camera and the player, how to jump and how to sprint. All of that should not have been in the main menu ward area. So like, those should have been separate. I am glad I did separate the mapping, because the mapping should be separate. But it would have been nice if the actual use of those mappings were also separate. Goal tolerance, that was a thing I added to the ward because I noticed that. So I guess that gets into a little bit of code down here. Woo, there you go. This get node AAB, which I think is something boundary box. Did this tell me? Yep. axis aligned bounding box. But basically I use this function to take a series of nodes to determine how high the cloud should be. But I needed to know also from that how much tolerance I wanted to give, because I didn't want it where the player had to hit the cloud level. I wanted to give it where they could stand on something and still be above the clouds. So that's what this gold tolerance was. And we'll get into that a little bit, but that's what that is. Lock mouse was a guidance. Why did I have lock mouse as a dedicated thing? Oh, because I needed to have direct callback to it. I am curious with that is if there would have been a way for me to get that from the mapping context. So that's something I definitely should look into in a later date, is can I get the guide action from a mapping context? Because right now I get it directly from here, which is fine, but if that mapping context was not the contextual thing that's open, I don't know how that would actually work. And I'm curious if you could trigger something without that. Cloud height, goal height. Again, these could have been much better handled. This is where I'm saying, like, this should have been an export variable. So this should have been export. And then I should have had a button that would let me click on that level and go, hey, please recalculate the cloud height. I didn't do that. So that kind of sucks. Start time, end time, or start time, toward time. We'll get into that. I don't know if that could have been better, but that's fine. Has one is false, beautiful. Last menu is a control. That was a way to allow, give me a second, let me bring up the game. The ability to go into like options and hit back, or the high score, hit back, or the credits and hit back. I wanted some way to quickly do that, and last menu was that way. Checkpoint position, I think this was relatively good code. I personally love properties, and I love properties with sets. Properties with Git can be complicated. It's one of those things that I'll explain. So the reason why I love sets is I can go, hey, set this value. So I can go, hey, whenever I want to set the checkpoint position, value equals this, done. And then I can go, hey, also, whenever you do something with this variable, also do something else. In this specific case, I went, hey, please turn the checkpoint visible if the checkpoint is not equal to the 0 vector, which I'd reset it to 0 vector every time we started the game. So that allowed me to have a telepoint to checkpoint without having to go check every time you open the menu if you did. It's kind of a hit and miss on which one would be better, in the sense that it depends on how often this is going to be checked. So checkpoint position, as you went higher up the tower, you would hit the checkpoint positions, and that would trigger all this code to run again, which means ultimately, if you didn't ever use checkpoints, you would hit, I think it was like 10 checkpoints, and each time you'd hit one, it would set the visibility to false or true, mostly true, every time, which isn't a good skill. It should have been, this bit of code right here should actually have been in the menu, when you boot up the menu, I should go, hey, before showing the player everything, just check, does the checkpoint position equal 0? I don't know how that would have been node structured, but that actually would have been a more efficient way, because unless somebody's seen the pause menu 10 times in a game, it would be faster than the other way, than set. Okay. Now on the get side of the house, and why get can be very valuable compared to it, and why I don't use get all that often, is let's say we have a get, okay? And get normally just returns whatever that value is, okay? But there's two cases where you might want to put something in get. One is additional actions. Okay? If I have additional actions I need to do every time I get a variable, then that's a place to do it. A common thing like that would be logging. So maybe I want to see how many times this variable is gotten. Or maybe I want to log what code is getting this variable every time. That would be a good place to put it. Another case is complicated dynamic code, okay? So what that means is, yes, I stored a vector3 in here, but I have some complicated code that does something to the vector3, and it needs to have that cleanup every time it returns the data. This is generally a bad practice because generally you write to a variable once and you read from a variable many times. So very rarely are you going to have a case where you're writing to a variable many times, but only reading from it once or twice. If you do have that case where you're writing many times and reading once, this is really good in the sense that if you have really complicated like cleanup code, instead of doing that every time you write, it's actually really good in the sense of you'll do it every time you read if you're reading less. That's a high optimization level, but that's why I don't use it. I use set quite often because I'll do stuff like this where I have additional actions I want to propagate down. Now, on this case, the teleport to checkpoint button is a variable on the canvas, which means really this should have been an event that I would have propagated out going, hey, checkpoint position updated. And then the canvas would have went, cool, I like that, I'm going to do this. That's if we wanted to optimize it without changing anything on this. If we really wanted to optimize it, like I said before, this should have been on the canvas, because most likely on a typical gameplay, the player will hit more checkpoints, then they will pause the menu to reset to a previous checkpoint. And because of that, I shouldn't be setting the visibility of the checkpoint button over and over again every time they hit it. So that could have been better. Checkpoint rotation, this was just me setting the rotation of the player so that they would show up correctly. So now we get into the actual code. So this is technically where the first line of real code in my game would be triggered. And the first thing I did was lock mouse.complete.connect lock mouse trigger. And this was a very problematic late, and I don't know how I would actually have done this better, but there has to be a better way. Basically what this code did is kind of like what I showed before in the guide. Do we have it? No, I have the other one open. 1 second, we'll just minimize this and open up the other guide. There we go. Basically what this one did is made it where whenever you click the escape or the tab, it would escape or lock your mouse into the game world. this would make your mouse disappear, and it would give you control of moving the camera and stuff easily. The problem with that is, especially on the web for Godot, I was running into issues where it wouldn't cleanly release the mouse. And I don't know really what would have been the best step for that, but this definitely wasn't the right way. Another thing is, maybe I should have had a dedicated script that got auto-loaded in, since this is related to everything in the game itself, and did this connection stuff beforehand. So like, maybe I should have a dedicated on-load script that just turns on all my various signals that are going to be global signals, such as the lock mouse. That would have maybe been a better implementation. Cloud height and get node AAB map size Y. Okay, so this function is not my own, but I have taken it and it is mine forever now. So first things first, if you ever take code from another source and you provide a source, definitely link back to it. You know why? For two reasons. One, it gives you where the code you got from. Okay? So here's the exact same code I stole. I think I modified a little bit of it, but there it is. But another great reason why you'd have this is, let's say I come in here and go, hey, that previous code has a major bug / exploit which steers credit card information. And I then put in a fix to remove that bug or exploit. Well, if you don't have this source, two things: there's no way for you to go back, unless you have great memory, to even know where you got this code from. So in the best case, you'd looked on that and been like, oh my gosh, there's this exploit, that's bad. But even if you didn't do that, let's say one of you watching played this game, had that exploit happen, and reported back to me going, all my credit card information was stolen because of your game, fix this. Well, I might be able to identify that it is coming from this function, but again, I didn't write this code. I understand this code well enough to implement it in my game. Always read the code you're about to steal off the internet. But I don't understand this code. I didn't initially write it. And as such, it'd be very hard for me. In this case, it's a very simple code, but if it was a very complicated code base, it'd be very hard for me to identify where the problem is, how to fix it, and how to maintain the capabilities this code gives me. However, if I had a link, like this source link, back to the original source code, I could be very lucky. I could have that bug one of you reported and go to it and go, oh look, what have I done or fixed that bug a month ago? Copy, paste, done. Of course, again, you should read code before you copy and paste it into your own code base. So, but this code I love. I'm going to actually shove this link into the chats for you guys, because if you're doing development in Godot, you don't need that. You just need the link. Come on. There we go. If you're doing development in Godot, this code, if you ever, let's see, let's grab here. Let's drop it out here. And let's right up, there we go. So if you have ever seen like this orange box around something, that's called a boundary box or bounding box, okay? And what it basically tells you is the width, height, and depth around something. And if you grab multiple items, as you can see, you get multiple boxes everywhere. But what I wanted to do is figure out how high my map went. Because if we go up here, in the actual game, the cloud level kind of hits right about... Oh, give me a second. The cloud level hits right about here. Okay? And I wanted that to be dynamically determined where that cloud level would hit, so that I could easily just throw in whatever I want. If I want to extend this another 3 levels, do it, and I'm done. And I wanted to know where that is. Well, as you can see, I can grab the last element out of the thing and kind of tell. But what if I was a bad developer and I shoved the tower here? Well, now the last element's this pizza slice, and that's a totally different height than this tower. So that's problematic. So what this script does is it takes a series of nodes, or a single node if you so choose, and grabs that single, or that series of nodes, gets the bounding boxes of all of them, okay? And then basically returns the maximum bounding box of, or the merge of all of those bounding boxes to whatever you want. And what I did is I said, hey, take the entire map and get the bounding box of that, because that is my level and I want to know how tall it is. So now if we go back to where I call this function, nope, there we go. We go back to where I call this function. I go, hey, give me the size of the bounding box and get me y, which y is your height in Godot. So with that, I now know exactly where the cloud level should be. And I love this bit of code. I'm making an infinite runner for my project that I haven't really announced much of yet. And I'm using it a lot to figure out how big a segment of that infinite runner is, without having to worry about figuring out how big those segments are. I just go, hey, get me the bounding boxes, calculate how big the total bounding box is, and then I can tell you, here's how wide the segment is, here's how long the segment is, all that. Really nice. However, if you quickly saw, it is a recursive function. It calls itself, which can be very intensive. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for a in-game code. It's not impossible, but because it's recursive, and it's kind of recursive in like the worst way. So it's a recursive for loop, okay? And why that's a bad way is recursion typically adds to the stack, okay? And your computer only has so many things it can kind of stack on top of operations before it just goes, no, something's wrong. I think you're having an infinite loop. I'm gonna just crash. And it can crash gracefully. It also can crash ungracefully. I don't know how Godot crashes on that, but yeah. So if I had node.getChildren and it gave me 10,000 children, it could hit that stack limit, and when it does, it's just gonna crash the system. And it's also recursive on the node it's checking, so it's not even a single line of children. It's not like, oh, I have 10,000 children, I'm done. Every child could be more onto that stack. So that's very risky. In my case, didn't have that many, were good. But if you were planning to use it in a big game, that's a big concern. And another big concern is because it's recursive, it's putting a lot of things on the stack and managing all of that, which means it's not freeing up resources. It's storing all those resources until it gets to the very last one and then starts freeing them up. And that can be problematic in the sense that if you're running on a very low-end computer, or you have a computer with doing a whole lot of things, such as like streaming, This recursive function alone could be the meter that breaks the camera's back, or the straw or whatever that breaks the camera's back, in that sense where, yeah, it works as long as it's small, but as soon as you get too big, it breaks. So something that I'd most likely look into is, can I put this into heap memory? Can I store it away in variables and then use those variables, pour them out independently in a for loop, and iteratively just go, hey, grab all the children, store them away in this hash, cool, done, dust my hands, we're done there, close out that operation, and then go, okay, now that we have all that, grab one child at a time, get their get their bounding box, and put them in there, and then store that away. That'd be a good thing. Better option, the option I'm doing with my current game, don't let the player ever run this code. Do it on your own hardware. Make it where your hardware typically is the more higher end hardware for your game. So if you build a huge level, you can wait an hour, 2 hours for it to calculate all the bounding boxes and stuff and do that. And then store the answer away. Go, hey, this level is never going to change, store the answer. And then what that allows is, later in the game, when the player's playing it, they don't even have to worry about calculating those bounding boxes. It's just given to them. So I love that bit of code. That was a game changer because I was like, I'm going to have to manually do that. Again, we determine if the cloud height is greater than the goal height. This never would occur in my game. I was just future-proofing here. Basically, I wanted my game to always have a max of 1,000 meters, 1K, hint the name. So with that, if it went over 1,000 meters plus the goal tolerance, I wanted to readjust it to that 1,000 meters in the goal tolerance. Never had to do that, but hey. Then we took the goal tolerance out. That allowed it to be, if it was at 500 meters, you didn't have to hit the single point. You had a meter or two that you could hit below that. This is bad. That should not have been there. Print statements are great for development. Print statements should not be in your final build. Not necessarily because it's a bad practice. Most compilers and game engines will remove print statements and stuff. But if they don't, you potentially are printing to a terminal, which is one of the things I'm certain you've seen, where you open up a program and you see like a little black box appear and then disappear. That's generally because they have print statements and other things that didn't get cleanly removed, so it's kind of bringing them up. It's not necessarily the case, but that is one of the things that could cause that. Goal position, or goal cloud.position.y. So this is me setting the cloud positions to the cloud height. So this is a point where that could have been done, that could be stored away better. I didn't need this cloud height. I could have put it on goal clouds and just set the Y value on them. It's kind of a hit and miss on that. It's a little bit of extra storage to say cloud height, makes it a little cleaner to read. But it's not the lowest in memory utensils. Full clouds.position.y already exists. So it's really a personal preference if you use variables for that or not. Height progress.set max cloud height. So height progress. Oopsie, come on. Is part of the canvas layer. Again, shouldn't be using the canvas layer here, but basically what it did is set the progress bar height. I think what it actually did is set max would do some calculations to figure out what the min max is and actually set it where it scopes appropriately. Back to the lock mouse toggle. This is how we were doing the mouse locking and mouse not locking. Some people could say there's a couple of ways to have done this. So I like my way. I actually don't mind this, but some people would say a cleaner way would be, or actually no, a cleaner way would be something like Q through. That's not the best variable name, but Q through. Then calculate the Boolean, okay? Then you can do a if statement, Q true. Because we still need to grab this. There is another way you could do this. You could do a ternary operator. I don't like ternary operators, but I'll do it anyways. So we could do that. And then I think it's... give me a second, just trying to remember which language I'm in. I think it's question mark, that, and then colon, and then this one. Nope, it didn't like that. Oh, it's... Okay, so... Thank Godot for giving me good error messages. So it should be if... I think... Let's see. Else. And then this should be true. True. True is not declared. Oh yeah. Well, so this would be better in the sense that we do the calculation once and then we evaluate that calculation a couple of times. The real benefit to that is now when it comes to this pause menu visible and stuff, it literally becomes in HUD visible. This literally becomes, I think, true. And this becomes not true. Which I think we actually write out like that. It just takes a lot of code, cleans it up. Again, I don't like the ternary operator here. So that's my big issue. And the reason why I don't like the ternary operator, real quick, is let's say I put a debug point here. I will not get a debug option excluding the two endpoints. So if there's a problem in this or a problem in this line, I won't get that. I will break on this line in its entirety. Which means if the only case I care about is when mode capture is true, then I will also hit when it's not. And that can get really annoying when you're testing large systems. So that's why I kind of break it into these if statements. However, these Booleans easily could have been different and it would have been better. There's a few other ways you could clean this up, but this would have been a much cleaner solution. Again, this ultimately had more issues than benefits because I couldn't trustworthily control it on the browser to ensure that you didn't get your mouse get stuck anywhere. So that's a big hunt and look into that I need to do. Deep dive into that. Okay, underscore process. This is relatively clean, which is great. We get the player's position, fine. Get that current height. Check to see if the cloud height is greater. So this is kind of where you start breaking into some areas of where Godot logic kind of separates. Is it better to do every frame calculating this, or would it have been better to have a function that said something like player, or I think it's like, would it be 2? I think I have a function here that is a signal. On. Okay. Sorry. Couldn't remember what the thing is. On. Player move. And it takes in a height. And return the void. And then on here, we would put in all of this code. That would have been the better case. Because right now, if the player stays perfectly still, it isn't great. In the sense that I would still run this bit of code every frame to find out the player is standing still. Where if I did it this way, I could have it where only the signal is emitted when the player moves. So then I don't even have to check if the player height has changed or if it's greater than or anything like that. I can trust, or I actually can basically grab all this code, shove it in here, and know that the player's position has moved. And most likely it's either they've gained or lost height. So that would have been a better implementation. Instead, I shoved it in the process. I am personally a goal of mine trying to get away from process everything. Primarily because it is just executing code every frame. And there's only so much execution you can do in a frame before you start hitting issues. So if I can separate it out into separate things, potentially separate threads if need be, that frees up the times where I actually do need to do something every single frame. Also, the process code becomes smaller, which means it can execute faster and get out. But that's that. Let's get into this. So we find out what the player position is. We check to see if they are greater than the cloud height. And we check to see if they have not won yet. So this I kind of don't like, because I would like it like that, because I'm certain some of you quickly looking at this thought that this if statement was pointless and it just really should have been a not, because that's where all the code is. But it's not, because I actually have a function that did this. I think I called it multiple times here. Yeah, I have. Oh, no. Oop. Yeah, it looks like I don't call win multiple places. So really, that could have been. This could have been taken into put into win. But I think the reason why I didn't do that is win is a little bit more complicated code. But I would have liked, this would have been a better implementation in my sense, especially going back and being able to quickly read this code and understand what it's doing. Oopsie. So this goes, hey, if you haven't won and you should be winning, win. Else, let's see what this does. This is a bad if statement. Right here is a very bad if statement. I should not have been doing it this way. Reason why? I cannot quickly read this if statement and tell you exactly what it does. And that is bad. If statements are very critical, especially when catching bugs, to know what state this thing will choose when it goes down this path, and I can't tell you what it is. While reading this, I can kind of piece it together now. So this is where the checkpoint system was coded in. Is if the player height, if their split meter was greater than this, and it has been shown, or it has not been shown, then take the new position and rotation of the player. That could have been much better coded. There's various places this could have been broken up by. So let's see. If we go, here's one section. And this really is checking. So the first section is checking if the current height is not a modulus of split meter, And what modulus means is, think of it like a clock. It goes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 0 again. And what I did is I made the split meter 5. So it actually went from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I did not, what it would do is 1, 2, 3, and 4 wouldn't execute, but when it hit 0, which means every 5 meters, it would do a new snapshot. So this is what that's doing, but that's not clear here. What this should have been is something like a function that would have been like, check if height is at, potentially I give it split meter. So now I can just go, hey, are you at the split meter? No? Okay, good. Which meant this should really be not check if height is at split meter. That would have been a much better function than this first half of the code. Easier to read. And then this and is checking to see if the current floor we're on, the current height, is greater than the height we just shown. So this could be check if height is past split. We're just do that split meter. Which that, hopefully you guys agree, would be easier to read than that giant if statement there. So now we're going, hey, if it's not at the split meter and it is if the floor is greater than the split meter shown, maybe shown or has shown. This is check to see. So if it's not at a split meter, if it is at split meter, yeah, I think it doesn't need the not. Theoretically, I'm thinking about code functions past this point, but yeah. So now we check if the height is at the split meter, and if it is at the split meter, and it is higher than the last split meter shown, then we need to get a new checkpoint. That would be clearer to read, easier to handle, and this, putting this in a function, I think would be overall better, because you might, in the future, want to check at the height at a different point, such as the goal height. This actually could now have been something like if, so good use of reusable code. This could have been check if height is at, and then cloud height or goal height or whatever, and that would be easier to read than actually seeing the code. So both of those could have been much better functions, but so far so good on the general aspect. Height progress, set current progress at current height. Again, this is where I was saying the progress bar in the game, when you're playing the game in the actual thing, that's where this was being set. Again, if we're calling this every frame, then every time you're not winning, I am setting the progress of your height. Even if you haven't moved, if you're just sitting there trying to plan out where you're going, I am behind the scenes going, hey, update the progress. Cool. I'm also behind the scenes going, hey, update the current split. Both of those are bad executions, should not have been done. This should have been put in an event, should have been called back. Okay, cool. Let's get into the win. So has won is true. This isn't necessarily too bad. There are times where you want to know if the player has achieved a certain goal or step. So fine there, cool. Turtle time, this is a way to get the time. Start time should have been set. I don't know where start time gets set. Oh, on start button press. Okay, that's fine. So this basically just gets the shorter time that game has been. Again, this is a good use of comments. Good job, SirLegna of the past. Because this alone isn't clear what it does. So this says, hey, it rounds it to 3 decimal places. Again, really good use. Potentially should have been its own function that took in maybe a number of decimal places and a number that you're wanting, or a float that you want to round down to. But without making its own function, without doing all that, especially in a Game Jam game, just this comment alone is enough to tell me, okay, this is taking the total time and doing some series of operations to reduce it down to 3 decimal points. Is this the most efficient bit of code? Potentially not. That would be something where you take other pieces of code, do some evaluations, do multiple testing to see which one's faster. But for a Game Jam game, perfectly fine. Total time label is set to total time. This is dangerous, I bet, because, yeah, look at what my word is reaching into. It's going, hey, give me the canvas layer, give me the windscreen, give me the panel, give me the margin container, give me the V-Box container, H-Box container too, and then give me this label here. Should never have gotten there. There should have been, again, like I said before, the canvas layer should have had an operatable function, and or there should have been a signal to say, hey guys, here's the win, here's some data, go edit, go have fun updating your win condition. Didn't do that, sucks. Turning on the mouse visibility, this seemed kind of bad because we do it here. So maybe this should have been a little bit cleaner, had a way to set the visibility there to ensure that everything gets executed right. Because we also do these 2 functions right after, which I bet pause true, HUD visible far. No, okay, so it's not the exact same, but it could have maybe been a better system. A more flexible system where we go, hey, this is the visibility of the mouse, and these are the HUDs that need to be visible, and these are the HUDs that need to be minimal. Again, even better, the HUD should just know it and have a way to have a signal emitted whenever the input mouse mode has changed. But I didn't do that. Disabling context menu mappings. Fine. I actually don't know why I'm disabling. I don't know why I'm disabling the word map, because that's the one that allows reading the mouse. So I guess I freed it for you, and then I just like go, yeah, you're not allowed to take it, give it back to me until I want it. So that's a little weird. Let's see this weird if statement. So get the window, if focus has entered, get connections, if any connection, return the connections callable that equal the lock mouse. Okay, so this is a little bit complicated code. Could have been cleaned up a little bit better. I will blame somewhat Godot on this, somewhat on my part, because there's just no way to get some of these without this weird incremental step. But basically what this is saying is, in the window that's currently open, anytime focus enters it, 4500, I have to go, interesting, but also, you know, I'm not tech savvy. Oh yeah, that's fine. This is kind of a retrospective for myself, for other Godot developers and stuff. And if anyone has any questions, definitely reach out. I will be willing to help. So they're saying when this window gets focused, whenever somebody moves mouse into it or clicks onto it, whenever a win occurs, there's connections to that. If any of them are connected to the lock mouse toggle, then disconnect them. This is kind of a cleanup, again, around me taking away that lock mouse toggle capability. I don't know why I would have done that, and that's a problem. So let's hypothetically say that was a bug that occurred, and that's why I did this. If that was the case, if this was a bug that caused this, then I should label that either in two ways. If you're working in a production environment or you have an environment that has tickets, there should be a bug ticket saying, hey, this is what the bug is, and I should label, hey, this is the code that solved that bug. If you're not working on that and you only have version control, then you should, in your code base, have either the version or the hash in that version control that stated when that bug was entered. A little harder to write, but sometimes you'll easily know where that is. Or you should have a hash on what the most recent hash was before your fix came in. The reason why is then you can go back quite easily and see, oh, this was a bug because of this. Did we fix that? Did Godot update and have a fix to that bug? Any of that stuff would have been important. Right now, this just looks like really odd code. I'm just taking away the ability to turn on and off your mouse whenever you win, which may be some of the issue with some of the bugs I encountered with the web is it's untrustworthy. Turn the windscreen visible true, HUD off. This should have been a state machine. Like, this is clear state machine behavior. Like, all this here, clear state machine behavior. I'm turning on and off variables that I need on a very specific state of the game, such as in this case when you win. And I should have had that in a state machine that I could go, hey, state machine has one. This person has one. Go off and do the things you need to do to set that state correctly. But I didn't. Return to main menu. Let's see how bad this is. So there is a bug here that I discovered when the game was released. I am resetting the player position and rotation. What I am not resetting is the player's velocity, which means if you return to main menu, your player will potentially just slide off the map or fly up into infinity or try to go into the ground forever. Both of those are really bad. If this was a proper game, this shouldn't have occurred anyways because the menu character should not be the player character. It should be two separate entities in your game. One has player controls where the person can play the game, and the other has nothing because it's just a character on the main menu. Or it has its own special code to do an animation or whatever on the main menu. Reason why that's very beneficial is, let's say you have conflicting code when the player inputs or when the player doesn't have input. If you have both of them attached in the same body, even if you remove the conflicting code on the player side when the player is actually playing, on the main menu side, that conflicting code could still conflict, and you might get it where the player can play on the main menu, which might not be what you're wanting. So that's something. Again, this should be a state machine. I should have a return to main menu signal, and it goes to that state machine, and that state machine goes, okay, turn off all of these, turn this on. It also, that state machine could also know what menu is visible instead of this kind of roll of the die, hit any menu that could be visible at this point. Again, I don't know why I'm disabling. Oh, I know why. Because again, I don't want you to play the main character when you're in a menu. So how do I do that? Very stupidly, apparently. I turn off your controls. not the great thing. Again, in this case, it can be complicated. So like in a pause menu situation, you don't want the player to control the player in the pause menu, okay? But at the same time, you don't want to have a separate player entity that spawns in at the pause menu and all of that. So at that time, there might be a time where you want to disable and enable mapping context. Yes, but in the general sense, it'd be better to clean that up. Pause menus are, I think, the only exception I can think of where you'd want to keep the playable player and disable their inputs. So that's fine. This is the inverse. Basically, we go, hey, actually, no, this isn't the inverse. Again, we're doing this weird bit of code where I'm just like, hey, if you enter and if you're entering the main menu, make it where you take your mouse away and re-enter. We don't lock the mouse thing. That most likely makes sense in the sense that we're disabling the ability to unlock your mouse again. But there's a lot of ways that could have been done. There should have been this forward mapping where it manages that locking feature should have been a global thing, should have been a state manager thing where that state manager manages it entirely. Where I can go, hey, enable mouse focus lock, disable mouse focus lock, and don't have to worry about any of this weird behind the scenes thing. The benefit also to that is I wouldn't have to have this weird connect callover thing because my global function that is managing that would know what it's connected to. It wouldn't have this, whoa, I don't know which signal to disconnect. It'd be like, oh, this is the signal I connected to. This is the signal I'm going to disconnect. On checkbox toggle, run toggle. I kind of like this. I don't necessarily like the full implementation of this, but this is the signal that the option menu propagates out when you mark toggle, shift to toggle run or whatever. And it turns the player's run toggle state on or off. That is good. I like that, and I think I expanded that in my playground project where I have a lot of snippet codes where I can just go, here's where this function lives. Here's it's a Boolean type. Give me an option menu like that. That's great, but this isn't the correct implementation. Again, the main ward thing shouldn't care about the player's runner board. That should be separate. Reality, that should be a config for two reasons. So why should options be config, or why should most options be config? One of two reasons. One, if your game has a issue where the player cannot boot up your game, if it's a config issue, if let's say run toggle breaks the game and it crashes every time you open it, if it's a config, advanced players or you can make scripts and patches that do this, will go into the config, turn that off, and boom, your game's working again. And then you're just like, hey, don't flip that option again, it's broken. Another reason why it's great to have it as a config, able to save it, so able to recall it, and it's able to be recalled anywhere in your code. So let's say player.runAboard toggle is something we want. Well, the option menu can just talk to the config, and then when the player loads in, it can just read whatever changed in the option menu. So that really should have been config. I don't have extreme experience in Godot using configs, but that's something I definitely should look into next time I am doing a game jam. Same thing with this player look sensitivity. I like the inspiration, but should have been config, should have been able to adjust it easily with configurable functions. If you're somebody who's like, oh, but I don't want the player to be able to change options, you can encrypt them, or you can store them away in another area, such as an online repo, depending on what you're trying to do. So this is on start menu button press. This I do not like, at least title-wise, because all the way up here, we read through the ready, read through the process. And if I was a developer, one of these two should tell me where the code starts. But in reality, it's all the way down here. This should be higher up. That's all I'm going to say. Not necessarily the worst place or worst way of how to do this, but it should have been higher up. It also maybe should have been a more diverse signal. As you're seeing, I'm doing a lot of things in here that if they were diversified, like the canvas layer and the mapping context and the lockable screen, then this is the signal. I could have propagated across all three, shrinking this code base across all of them. Okay, but let's see what we do. We set the player's position and rotation to 0, fine. We set the checkpoint to 0, fine. Has run to pause, fine. Height progress reset. Again, I don't like that it's calling a canvas layer, but that's fine. Start time, fine. We just hit the start menu, that's fine. Split view timer start. Again, I don't really like that because that's the back end. So this is a great question that would be a good thing to review. The start time really is game logic. It's not the client or GUI side of the house to do that. But start time gets used in the GUI for calculations and other things. So there's a couple ways you could do this. In this case, it's not something that's updating constantly. But as you can imagine, maybe it's a timer or something that we want. So another way to do this is what I call my vault. I don't think I have one in this game, but I normally have a vault in some of my games, which are global variables. They are variables that one parent really only has the right ability to, but I want multiple children, multiple diverse children to be able to read from. And the reason why I'd want this is such things as like points. I only really want a set of things to only be able to write to points, but I want the high score system to be able to store points, or I want the GUI to be able to display points, and stuff like that without a lot of things. Now, another way to do this would be using signals and having like signal gain points, here's the amount. And then every system has its own point system that it stores away, keeps track of it. Good thing, awesome. Everything's diverse. You don't need this raw entity in between everything. Bad thing, everything's diverse, which means if one thing is off for whatever reason, it's going to always be off. There's no easy way to clean it up. There's no easy way to reset it other than to reset everything. With the vault, one single source of truth. If it's off, you're not going to get a high score of 10, and then if you look at your score in the background, it's 500, and it's because the high score is off. It's going to be 500 or 10 across both. Is it possibly wrong? Yes, it is possibly wrong, but it's possibly wrong in both locations, which is more commonly acceptable, undiscoverable to the player that it is wrong. It can make it harder to debug as well, but it is a cleaner, in my opinion, way to ensure that the player doesn't get a bad feeling from the experience of the game. This, again, canvas, all that, like, literally, we're talking about state machines would have taken, what is that? I actually can't see the line. I can't see the lines. 15 to 10 lines out would have been a state machine. 9 lines because I would have to tell the state machine to emit, hey, we are starting game or whatever. But that's fine. This is the okay way to quit the game. It'd be nice if this was easier, but fine. On option button is pressed. This shows the option menu, and this is where I'm starting to use the last menu. Again, my code, my main game code, shouldn't care about what the last menu of the GUI was. That should be GUI code, and that should have been separated away. That's frustrating. On back, again, this is kind of doing the same nonsense, but in the reverse. On scroll, button press, turn off the start menu, put the start menu as last, high score visible. Another thing with this is poor code stability-wise, in the sense that right now, if you press the scroll button, you're only on the main menu. But let's say a developer 3 months from now go, hey, I want to be able to display the main scores in the options menu or in the game itself when you pause the game. This function will break because it believes the only time you're ever be in the scroll button press is when you're in the main menu. Where if it was a separate entity, which was a proper state machine, that proper state machine could go, hey, I'm going to accept what menu you're in, what menu you're about to go to, and I'm going to do all that management. And then it doesn't matter if you're in the start menu, if you're in the option menu, if you're in a new menu somebody created for a different game at any time, it will be able to handle that. So that is, I think, the worst offending code I've seen so far. Okay, we already went through the bounding box thing. On code submit, this shouldn't care about this. This should be something the high score viewer should be able to do. Reality, high score viewer, actually no. Username edit is not the high score viewer. It's the win table, I think. On score submit button. High score viewer. Yeah, I think it's the I think it's just very bad text, but I think what this is actually showing the win screen at this point. You're submitting your score for your win screen. You type in your username, and then I update the text with that if there's anything in the username. And then I return to the main menu. This should have never even been in this code. This should have been inside the win screen submit menu, which when you press that button, it knows, hey, there's a text field somewhere. Grab that text, throw it in. Turtle time would have been a little bit complicated, but again, that's where the vault comes in. The vault would have known what the end time and what the start time was and gotten that. Potentially, when the game wins, it could have fed that into the win screen and said, hey, win screen, here's the total time it took that person to win. Go. So there's a lot of options there that could have been done. And then return to main menu. Again, the win screen could have emitted a signal saying, hey, you don't need to know who I am, what I am, or where I am. I am telling you, please go back to the main menu. And then the main menu system could have done the rest from there. Okay, teleport player on check. Press button. Player check position. Rotation. Yep, all that's fine. So we're getting it from the previous thing. This is bad. So this is really bad because as you can see, I'm saying turn off the start menu and turn off the pause menu. But we already know the pause menu cannot return you back to the checkpoint position. So there's no point where the start menu would ever have to be off. However, I turn it off anyways. If I had a state machine, I should have had a state machine for this. I could have had it where, hey, turn off the visibility. Even better, don't even render the visibility. Remove it from the tree state layer and bring in the HUD view. But I didn't do that. Kind of sucks. A little upset. Then input mapping. We've discussed that before. Lock mouse toggle. This is problematic because I actually don't know what the lock mouse is at right now. All I know is when I call this, I'm going to toggle it. But am I toggling it true? Am I toggling it false? I can't tell you, and it could be wrong. So that potentially is where some of my lock mouse toggling bugs are. On credit, again, this isn't bad. It just is poorly written in the sense that it believes the credit only will be seen in the start menu. If I have it in the pause menu, it breaks. So, and then so this is an option, which actually isn't too bad. It basically takes the value and sets it to this. I should really come up with a very rigid option system, which basically takes in any value, be it Boolean, float, or whatever, and then has a callback function which can inject or bind values or something to that callback. The reason why I should do that is it makes it where the functions that call, or the options that do that, can handle it. Or, like I said before, put it in a config. So that is 200 lines just doing the game code. Now, let's see what other bits of code that were interesting. These weren't too interesting, so these are the construction wheels and stuff. All I wanted them to do is rotate on a certain rate. So I have this right here, and then on a process I rotate it. That is good use of a process. Every frame I want it to rotate, don't care. Now, I have considered expanding this game and making a better game out of this, and one of them is making it deterministic. This is not a good way to make it deterministic because I cannot control what area this thing is at any given time. So if you pause the game and go back, or if you complete the level and then go back to it, the rotation of the static body will be different every time, which is not deterministic, which means I couldn't code a ghost in. I do that across a bunch of these. I do these also against the pizza wheel. I just changed which one I do it on. So this is on the Y, this is on the X. That could have been done better too. I'm certain there's a way I could have had it where I would have had a Boolean or something that would have let me choose which one of these to rotate on. Again, this is a game jam game, quite quick, but overall, not the greatest. I reused it here. This is, I think, actually where I got more close to what I was wanting, is this vector 3 goes, hey, don't rotate it on the X, rotate it on the Y, don't rotate it on the Z. Here's the spin rate and the delta. And that would have been a better one because then I could have export, or just quickly show you what that would have been. Export, var, rotation, and this will be a vector 3. Why are you not liking it? Oh, rotation's already a thing. Spin. Happy. So now, if I went to this tower, I would have had this spin, and I could have put a 1 or 2 here. or whatever. And if I made it an eye, it would have actually made it really good. Now, I don't know what rotate object local would have done if it took a vector 3 of a scalable aspect. So a unit vector 3 by a specific radians, the rotation axis is the object's local coordinates. So yeah, I don't know what would have happened if I gave it a 2 or 4, but that would have given me the ability to take any object, go here's how fast I want you to rotate, and here's the angle of the rotation I want you to do. But didn't do it that way. That kind of sucks. That would have replaced the pizza spins. That would have replaced the wooden wheel spins. All of that would have been the same script. Why do we want it all the same script? Well, very simply. If there was a bug, this shouldn't have it. But if there was a bug, it would have been a bug across everything, which is a bug easy to find versus a bug in one specific location, which makes it very hard, if impossible, to find. So there's that. The canvas layer, we had this. I don't think this is anything of my code. No. So we don't need to care about that. Let's close all of these down. Discard. High score viewer. So we already had code in the high score viewer. And yes, this is the code that I needed to go in and change a couple of things before even starting to stream. Because what it did is use Google Forms and Google Sheets to actually store the high score as well as log new ones. And as you can imagine, if I gave you the hash for each one of those, you'd be able to go not only to the spreadsheet, but also the forum and type in whatever you want to submit. So not great long-term solution for a high score system, but for a game jam, perfectly fine. In an alternate universe, if you were to try to extend this into a 4 game, this would be something that would be one of those secrets that you'd want to store either on a server or in an encrypted file in the game itself. Highly recommend server for 2 reasons. You're able to change it as needed without the user knowing. Downside, it has to always be online. The benefit, or the major benefit is, unless somebody hacks your server, no one's gaining access to that. So you can trust that whatever is written to it is written by a game to that address. If you want to really be good, you don't even do that. You don't use Google Docs at all. You put your own server log up, and you have a way of validating the inputs, such as checking a hidden value or something, or an unknown value in the game when it submits, so that you can go, yes, you actually scored that rate. I didn't do it. It's a game jam game, quick and easy, but those would be options you would want to do. Let's see what we got here. We got a high score, we got a name line editor, a second line editor. I don't think I ever used that, because I think that came from the test code. Let's see, do we have nodes? There's a high score label. I'm looking for the high score, and this is where this garbage dump of things would have been better. Let's see, high score label viewer is just some JavaScript. Okay. I guess I built it inside here directly. So we're gonna have to go into the TD ward, turn off this debug, and turn on the high score to see what we got. So we have a table, we have a panel, we have a environment, we have a panel, we have a margin container, we have a scroll bar, and a drop down, which would be where all the high scores would be viewable. Then we have a control, we have a refresh button, we have an add button that's hidden, we have another control, we have a name edit, and a line edit. So as you can see, this was prototype code. I watched the video, I learned how to do it, and then I turned off anything I didn't want the player to be able to see at that given time. In a Game Jam game, perfectly fine, but in a non-Game Jam game, this is a risk factor. It's technical debt. In two ways. One, it is code. It is just extra code that's being used, ran, and managed that could have a long-term issue. On top of that, it's existing dead code, which means if a user could figure out how to turn this and this on, they could potentially, they also need to turn the add button on, but if they could figure out how to turn those three buttons on, or those two line edits and the add button, then they could actually go in here and just submit whatever score they want and it would work. And that's why dead code is bad. So that should have been, I should have removed those nodes, I should have removed the code. At worst, I should have removed the nodes to ensure that the likelihood of the user being able to edit anything would have been a much different thing. They would have had to been able to actually submit the endpoints itself. But I didn't do it in a Game Jam game, sue me. The controller container is just the thing right here that was storing the usernames or the high scores. So that's not bad at all. Okay, so here we got the preload of the label. So let's just pop that open real quick. Oh wait, sorry. There's the label. So label, you have your names, you have your points, fine. You have a little break in between, fine. Rank's good. Second label is the seconds. Great, cool. That's easy. There is some code for the label, so we might want to read into that eventually, but preloading that, perfectly fine. You want to use it multiple times, great. In a best case scenario, this would be a separate scene. It'd be one of the preloading capabilities of that scene, and the reason why we'd want that is so that we can not have that extra memory sitting around where you're playing the game. While you're climbing the tower in the game, it does not need to know how a high score label actually shows up in the game. Shouldn't do that. Should be unloaded at that point. But this is a Game Jam game, so fine. So then let's get into this. URL submit, URL data. So right now I replaced the actual hashes I had for this. Like I said before, in an actual production product, you should not reveal secrets. Secrets should be gotten at runtime or is stored in an encrypted environment so that the player cannot easily access this. You also want it to be stored in such a way that somebody cannot intercept it. So a great example is, let's say I find your secret code to, delete accounts. Let's say you have a special hash that you have to pass in to delete accounts. And I find out what that hash is. Well, now, if that hash is universal, I can just type in somebody's account and delete it. So that's the big fear. And I find a lot of people, when they work online games, they do it very game jammy and go like, oh, it's all fine. Here's the hash. I just hard coded it in. And that's fine for a game jam. Not real good if you're going production level. So just a consideration. These URL submit, URL data. This is something that in a full game might want to be in its own config. Why would you want it in its own config? I want to change this. We're not using Google.com anymore. We're using DuckDuckGo.com or whatever. I wouldn't be able to do that. I would have to make an entire patch to the game. People would have to update it and all that. If I make it in the config, two things. If I make it in a public config, I know that's a risky factor, but if you make it in a public config, your game goes belly up for whatever reason. I know your games won't, but if your game did, and I am a big fan of your game, I would love to continue playing it. I know you can't support it because money is tight, and you had to close down your studio, and it was very sad. I can go into the config and build up my own server and go, hey, server, I know there's this endpoint, it's going to do stuff, please do it. And I can revive your game even if it's in a not perfect state. So that's a big benefit to the configs. Would I put this in the same configs I'd put in the options? No. I'd most likely put this in a more deep config, something along the lines of like game control or game init configs. So that people can easily adjust the options without worrying about breaking everything in the game. Headers, again, this kind of could be in the same boat. Generally, headers remain the same, but if you really want to remain flexible, that should be stored off in a place where it's easily configurable. Client and HTML, that's just things. This is me telling myself what these entry points are. I think, yeah, right here, I kind of just start grabbing entry points, and this comment helps me know what they are. And that's that. In another word, it would maybe have been better to have something like a variable saying form name equals the magic string entry blah blah blah. Might have been better. Putting it in a config would have been better long term, because if that ever changes, I have to release a new game. So again, always list your source. I think this is a public URL. I don't recall. It might be a private one. Let's just quickly see. Leave. Yeah, it's a public one. So if you want to know how to make a high score system like I just did in that game, let me send that to you guys. I think it starts like halfway through, but you can refresh it all the way back. It's really good. I was actually quite impressed with the capabilities and how easy it was to set up. It's also somewhat any game engine capable, as long as you're able to send HTTP requests and you can host as an HTTP client, you can do it. So the update is creating a new entry. So we go, hey, we have a new request. We connect it so that when the request is completed, we get an HTTP submit feedback. We had to add the child. I don't particularly like that, but it's how Godot does things. It becomes a node, and then I free that node immediately after. But yeah, it would have been nice if it was just all code. So then we give it the data. Like I said, this is the name, and this is the points. Again, maybe I should have labeled that a little bit better. And then if an error occurs, or no, sorry, we put in the request. If an error occurs, we free the thing. This would have been a little bit nicer if these two could have been simultaneous, in the sense that if an error occurred, free the node the same way you'd free it either way. And then we print the error. This is not the greatest. It would be better if there was a way to log the error. I think print does log it in a production code base, but I'm not certain on that. Let's check the documentation real quick. Converts, considers, push, print. print distinguish them from print messages, debug, browse, decrease. Also see print to shout out. Okay, let's do that. If false, yeah, I don't know if it prints into a log or something. It really should, especially on the production side. If you have an error message, one or two things, you should display it to the user. I don't even do that. But you also should print it to a log, either a log you control through like a website, or a log that the user has access to, such as a text file. Why? If a user has a problem, they can at least tell you, here's the exact error I got when I did la. I didn't do that. We did clear it and all of that. Really, that should happen if it is an error or not. So that's kind of bad on my part. I think the reason why I didn't do it is because technically I don't reset the environment yet. So if you error out and it's because like just your internet went down for a second, you can hit the button again and do it again. Yes, so this is me waiting 10 seconds to make sure the data got to the server, and if the data did, I say, hey, please refresh the high score system. The reason why I did that is, for whatever reason, it seemed like the high score system wouldn't refresh otherwise, primarily because I did it bad. It should refresh on boot, but it doesn't know when it's booted. It only knows when it's visible or not. So there's questions on that. So like, if I did it on boot, it could take a while for it to get that data down. But if I do it on this, then I need to have some way to store that data long term. Both of those are not the best option. What would be really good, and it's what I'm not doing, is I should store the high scores somewhere outside of the GUI. Common advice, GUI and data should be separate. Your GUI should be showing the data, but your data should not be attached to your GUI. The reason why is stuff like this, where I could refresh the data and then the GUI could just grab it. And then I don't have to worry about having the entire GUI up whenever I do that. I don't know how easy that would have been with this bit of code, but that would have been the better option. If we submit, we free, fine. HTTP done. Ooh, okay. So on a refresh button, we press, oh yeah, okay. So I don't like the order of this. I personally, when I was in school, we did a bunch of lab reports, and I love the reasoning behind why we did lab reports a certain way. You should never introduce me to something prior, or yeah, you should never introduce me to something prior to you using it. Okay? So, HTTP done. Cool, that's a function. Where does it get used? I don't know, I haven't seen it yet. And you can argue both ways. You could argue that, oh, HTTP done should be after the function declared, because you should know what the function is. And depending on the language, you might not even get a choice. I believe C requires functions to be declared before you use them. Me personally, I rather have it where I go through the code, and then the last bit of the code is amendments, or not amendments, appendix to the code. So as I'm going through it, I'm going like, oh, on a refresh button, done. Okay, so when I press the refresh, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to create an HTML. When it's completed, it's going to do the HTTP done. Do I need to know what HTTP done is now? No, I don't need to know what it is unless I care about what it is. Where in the other case, I get HTTP done. Cool. Do I need to know what this is? I don't know. It just is whenever HTTP is done. So that's a pet peeve of mine that I hate, and I did myself. So yay. We free the node, that's fine. We create a new JSON, that's cool. If the result is not empty, because if it was empty, it would be false. If it's not, it would be true. So when it's not empty, this could be better a couple of different ways, but for right now, it's fine. So the reason why I'm saying this could be better is this isn't 100% clear. In Godot, we are able to do that, and that's at least clearer. What would be even clearer is something like is empty. And this again is personal preference. So now it just reads in plain English. If not, is empty this variable. So if this variable is not empty, we know we are in this statement. Some coders will say you don't need to do that because this is clear already if you know code. It really comes down to who you're working with and how easy it is for you to read the code. For me, I can read this pretty easy. I've been coding for a good long while. But for somebody who's entering, or if I was working on a project with a bunch of new people, into coding, it would be something like is underscore empty. Take the results. And then it's very clear. Anyone who grabs this code can immediately go, okay, I know exactly what this is doing. You also, is empty can be very dynamic, if depending on the language, and handle other cases, such as arrays, or dictionaries, or anything like that. It doesn't have to always be something that only results in a bool if it is. So, that's a personal preference, but I wanted to change it off that. JSON body parse, body. So this is a little complicated. I wouldn't necessarily change it, but it's a little complicated what it's saying. Basically, it's going to try to parse the body, and if it does, it's going to say okay. Which I think okay is a special constant, basically saying it did not error out on the parse. Then we go JSON.data. I remember coding this, and I hate this. So JSON.parse takes in a body, which we converted to a string, specifically of UTF-8, okay? But parse doesn't return the JSON. It doesn't. It returns an error, which is fine. But the issue is, I don't like weird properties like this, because this I expect to return the parse data, and it doesn't. It returns an error, and then I have to request the data. Again, not the end of the world. It's a style I don't like. When I code, I just don't like that style. I rather, when parse, it parses and returns. A way to do this, and a way to do this that isn't done here, it would require rewriting the entire JSON object, would be something like JSON.parse, it does your parse, then do a get data if okay, sure. And then what this would do is this JSON parse return the JSON object still, and that JSON object would have an error property to it, and then you could go, hey, if the error is okay, just give me the data. I don't need to do anything. So like in this case, I actually do something, but that is a way to do it. It's called the builder pattern. It's a way. So this is fine. Bar data, we get the data, cool. For n in high score container dot get children, high score container dot remove children, free that child. I think that's the fastest way to do that in Godot. I don't like it. It'd be really nice if we could do something like high score container dot children. Can we? No. It'd be really nice if there was an option to like clear the child or delete all children nodes. We can't do that here, but that would be a nice feature because that's all this is doing. It's basically going, hey, in here, grab all the children, remove them, and free them. Delete all the children under this node. This would be a great function just to have. So in refactoring of this, that'd be something I'd throw into like a utilities or a tool system where I'd be like, hey, I have this tool that allows me to just muck around with the tree. I can go, hey, here's this node, empty all the children underneath it, and I'd be happy. So that's fine. This is 2n, so not a great error. It's actually mn in operations. So when you go into for loops, you gotta be really careful with for loops because the number of operations grows quite rapidly. So if these are two for loops stacked inside each other, you get every one of the first for loop has n number of the second for loop. So if you have 3 in the first for loop and 3 in the second for loop, you have 9 total operations executing, which can be excessive. This is n times m, which means n, we're clearing data, and then m, we're adding new data back. Hit or miss. I don't know if there's really a faster way to do this. So let's see, what do? We grab a thing, we instantiate it, that's fine. So a cleaner way is we could have made a pool. So an object pool, which would allow us to not have to instantiate all this data over and over again, and actually that would be a cleaner way. So let's just quickly code that up, okay? So we could have for I in data dot size. So any amount of the data we're getting back, we get that. We can go, would be, we want this outside the loop, so we can go number of children equals I score container. Thank you. Get child count. I think this is +1. Might not be. Somebody can double check that if need be. So then we can go if I, right? I is a number, right? Yeah. If I is greater than, actually we'll do it E0 less than or equal to the number of children. That means we already have an entry. We don't need to add another one to the high score container. So if it is, then we can go in and just overwrite it. So we can just go high score container dot get child of I. So we get the child. We're going to make this var old user just so that it doesn't conflict. So we get the child. We store it as a old user, or even make it a high score label just to make it clear. And then we don't need to do the add. We can just now do all this user data adding. Which actually we can make this cleaner. We can say, hey, you're going to have a user. It's going to be a high score label. There we go. We don't need to redeclare it, and that gets us out here, which also means that this can get out of the for loop. This is for loop on looping. This is quite good optimization. Generally, your compiler will do a lot of for loop on looping, but this is a good way of doing it. So now if we have an existing one, we do that. If we don't have an existing one, so if it's not existing, we then go here, copy this, user equals that. Okay, there we go. We grab all this code, rip it out, do it here, and now we're reusing children that already exist. We don't need 2 for loops here. Now, there is one little issue that you might have not caught here, and that is if the children count is less than the data size. In this case, that shall never happen because we are never deleting high score records. But if you were ever going to do that, you're going to need to do one additional check and then loop through the remaining. So you'd have to do var children index to remove, and this would be high score container got get, or actually we already have that. We just do number of children minus data.size. So if that is a positive number, then that means that we had more children existing already than we have in the database. So then we need to go if our index to remove is greater than 0. Then the next tough part is figuring out what index to do. I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't give me the good for loop style. Yeah, but typically you have for loop like I equals 0, and then colon if I is greater than 1, and then colon I plus plus. This is a typical for loop. I don't know how to do that in Godot off the top of my head. But the thing is you would start, instead of starting at 0, you'd start at the child index to remove. Lost one maybe. And then this becomes the total number of children. So, and then we just do the remove bit right here off of this guy. And what that allows is, in best case scenario, you're just adding or you're just looping through the data set. In worst case scenario, you're not looping more than the biggest data set you have. So this would be N or M operation versus N times M operation. So that is a better way of coding this if you're looking at high optimization. Again, this is a game. I didn't care. I just said, hey, wipe the table clean and start over. But in a better product, you'd want to have those things to clean up the data. You also have fors, so you're not instantiating, because that call right there is very taxing And doing that over and over again can be very taxing. Else, we get the error message, we print it out, get it at the body, and we get the error line. That's fine. Else, we print out the entire thing and we say, hey, good luck. On a refresh, we get the HTTP done thing, which is what this is. And basically that's requesting, hey, we need a refresh. If that gets us an error, then we clean the thing and we print the error, that's fine. And the add button just calls the update function, which is right here. So that's beautiful code relatively. There's a couple of for loops here and there that could have been optimized, but that's all fine. Yeah, labels, again, this is why I love set. There is no, air quotes, there is no functions in this code. It is just variables. So we have the variables that tell us where everything is. And then when you set the rank variable, I actually set the text. And then I set the variable to that. And same with the label and all that. The benefit to that is I don't need to have a set call. You can just set it, and wherever you set it is going to be where it gets set. Some people like this, some people don't. I personally love this because I rather do something like rank equals blah than have to do set rank equals blah. And it's a personal preference. I rather it be variables when it's variables and just that variable has some side effects. There is more pure code where variables should not have side effects. When you set a variable, you should only be setting that variable. So it depends on what side of the fence you're on. I personally like side effects when it comes to variables. I understand properties, it makes me good. Some people will actually do like _p to help indicate that it's a property and it's going to have side effects either when you get the data or when you set the data. Me personally, I just trust that because I'm the coder, my side effects will not be vastly negative. I'm not doing anything great. I'm trying to get out as quickly as I'm in that function, and I'm trying to do something that I would do every time, no matter where that function gets set. But if you're doing something like this, and then you're doing like user.jump, well, that's a side effect that you might not realize when you set the rank. It might make sense in your first implementation when you code rank. You might go, hey, every time I update the rank, the user should be jumped. The user should jump every time. But you might come to find out that later down the line, 10, 20 days later, a couple releases in, you code up an enemy that needs to set the rank. And now your user's jumping randomly. And you're like, why is my user jumping? Another thing, especially in Godot, you could do is, let's say we have another variable called data, a string, because everything here is a string. You could do set value, and then in here you could do an emit signal and give it a signal to emit to decouple the association. You don't see the benefit of that, but that is a way you could do that so that any extra things outside of here when that variable gets set will have its behavior done. I've never done this, but it is a thing you can do in Godot. Okay, so we've done a lot of things so far. Let's see what else we have. So we were in the ward. We were checking out the high school thing. We got the gold clouds. So again, this is me just wanting to rotate something. The clouds above looked a little too stationary when I developed it, so I wanted to have them rotate slightly. Again, with all the other rotation code, this should have been a function somewhere. Either a function, or it should have been a global variable, a global node, believe, or not global node. It should have been a component to a node that I could give it to, and it would rotate its parent. And I could just adjust how much that rotation is. That would have been the more component style of doing it, the more Godot way of doing it. Again, I needed something fast. I was like, I need to rotate it on the Y. It's going to be a delta dash 10. Kind of sucks, but fine. Let's get into the player code, which is really the last major bit of code. So, the player had a lot of shortcuts, I guess will be the best word to say. So, I already broke it up quite nicely in the sense of like look sensitivity and toggle sensitivity, or in the group settings. And then in the group required, these are the things that the object requires to run. Which are mostly just ways to interact with the guide action system. Then I had other things that were just loaded in, specifically, hey, where's the camera? Hey, where's the animation? And hey, where's the modder itself? All perfectly fine logic for things. We have jump velocity of 6, that's again fine. Somewhat, some people argue that those should be exports. I say they shouldn't be exports because the only time you should want to really change them, you should want to change them. You should have to go into the script and change them. If this was players and I had multiple players and I had different properties of players, yes, those should be exports because you have different types and you'll have like inherent in class and stuff. But in a case where I only have one player, I should not accidentally be able to change the jump velocity and not really know. Such as like right here with the look sensitivity. If I go into the 3D and click the player. If I accidentally go here, whoopsie, there it is. Nope, that's settings. If I accidentally go here and whoopsies, yeah. Did it change? Guys, did it change? I don't know. I need to go to the cloud. I just clicking around. But, oh, look. It's now negative 9.89. Cool. I don't know why my look sensitivity is not only in the opposite direction, but also much more than I ever wanted in my look sensitivity to be. Yes, you can revert it. People will say you can revert it. What's the problem? Reverting it will revert it to the default, not to the previous value. So it is a hit or miss to me. Settings, you at least should have it where it's at least 2 clicks. These should be collapsed and you should be able to click and then go in. That prevents an accidental click and drag chaos. But I also say, if it's something where you're only having one character, make it constant. It's actually somewhat faster under the hood as well, to my understanding of how Godot works. Min-max rotations, that was the X rotation, that's turning up and down the head. That's so that you can't look through your body and you can't roll your eyes so far back you see your toes. Run multiplier, climb multiplier, that was a way for me to have an easy way to ensure that running and climbing had these rates versus walking. Run toggle, lock toggle, these are associated with the settings, run toggle is associated with the run toggleable, and then camera lock was a way for me to get climbing looking good. Okay. Current animation and animations. This was a way for me to kind of clean up how I was doing animations and having it where I could easily add and understand where everything was working. Not the greatest. It would have been nice if there was like an enum. It would have been nice if there was other ways to manage that. I just couldn't think of that at the time. So here is actually a great point on my Git. I have a speed variable. Typically, the speed variable is how fast you're walking. But, depending on the state of your body, will decide what speed I want. I could have a special function in my code that goes, hey, if it's walk, turn on the speed walk variable or whatever. Or what I did is I went, hey, when you get this, you're going to return one of three things. If you're on the wall, you're climbing. You're going to return the climb multiplier. If you're running, you're running. You're going to return the run multiplier. If you're walking, you're going to return the speed. The great thing about this is that means the rest of my code, wherever I use speed, I don't have to think about where they are in the war. I can go, hey, the speed's going to be this. And it's just going to be that. I don't have to worry about if they're walking, running, squatting, whatever. Again, people can argue that it could be a state machine and stuff like that, and it might be better. This is just a way, especially in a game jam game where I'm just like, I want a static, I want to know that it's going to always work this way every time. That's how I do. Same thing with is running. I have two ways to tell if you're running. You're either hurting the running trigger or the running toggle is on. I don't want to have to figure out which one of that is. It's going to be a Boolean and it's going to call it running. Done. You're going to get the condition. Now, some people say, oh, make that a function. And that's fine too. Ultimately, you're doing the same thing either way. But to me, is running is a Boolean answer. I don't want a is running function. I want it, hey, is it running? What's the is running state? So, okay, so now we get into the actual code. So when we ready up, we connect the jump. So yeah, this is something I didn't like. So we have all these actions, okay? And that's fine. But then we have to go independently and go, this action's connected to the jump. This action's connected to the move. So on and so forth, and so on and so forth. I don't like that. And I really wish I could figure out how to combine those a lot closer. Because I'm just going to tell you what the action is here. And I would really like to be able to say, hey, on that action, also do this function, instead of having to set that up in the ready function. That's a personal preference to me. Maybe there's a way to kind of do it. Let's see. If we drop down into 3D World, player requirements, if I click this, I can change what the state is. I can change if it blocks. I can change if it emits as Godot actions. I can change if it's remappable. I can change how it displays. I can change how the category it displays as. But I can't set the signals to it. And if I go to the node, I don't have it there. And if I go to the actual inputs, they aren't nodes. So I can't set the input actions there. I literally have to do them at the ready, and I just don't like that. I don't like it in 2 ways. So it's not clean. It is going to be a laundry list. If I had 100 different actions, I'd have 100 lines of going, oh, if it does this, call this function. If it does this, call this function. So on and so forth. Just not something I particularly want. I have to really think about how I can code it up better. So I did look up what triggering complete means, because I was having issues with the move where the move would run, and then when you stop moving, it would kind of still be moving, sort of. So if anyone's using the guide mechanism, the tips: triggers every move, every process frame. If you actually go into this, you get the trigger function, the guide action, and if you actually go into where that gets called, I'm not going to be able to find it again easily. I think it's this ongoing actually is what gets called. And I think this gets called in the other thing, and that's what determines when to call it. But ultimately, it gets called every process frame. Not what I particularly want. In this case, it's fine. Movement is fine on that. It'd be really nice if it emitted its own thing, but I understand it can't necessarily get interrupted when the button is pressed, so it has to do this wonky thing where it just listens the entire time. It's still better than you listening the entire time, because it's listening to all the inputs across everything and emitting what it needs to emit. So your code isn't taxing any more than checking the value and singling out. This triggers after the input has been zeroed, so this helps me know when you've stopped. So that's fine. Try change animation. This is the function I created to help, and I'll quickly go to it. So this is what I was talking about, is trying to optimize a little bit of things with animations because I was getting a little confused. And basically what I wanted is, hey, if the current animation is not the animation you're doing, set it to the current animation and play that. And as you see, I had it in many different locations, and it was the exact same lines of code. It was check to see if this is the current thing. If it is, do it. So I wanted a way to just go, hey, here you go. And that's why this array came into being, this next animation came into being, and the current animation came into being. So basically, it kind of sucks in the sense that it's a magic number. Again, it would have been nice if it was an enum, but I don't think I could shove this as an enum, and I couldn't easily loop through the enum list as I wanted to. So that's the game plan I had. Better case, it would have been an enum. It would have been something like an enum or a dictionary where I would have been able to go, hey, idle, do this. Hey, climbing, do this, and so on and so forth. You win some, you lose some. So run toggle. If the run is toggleable, then toggle the run. Really simple, easy to do. So that's fine. Stop, move. Move one last time and then go to idle. Move. We take the movement velocity. There's a lot of confusing code in the player thing. Also, this is all in the player. A better design, it would have been a component that the player has, and the component then moves the parent, and the parent doesn't need to know anything about this. But game. Okay, so we get the movement velocity, which is the basis and the movement that we got. Again, this is being triggered on here, so I know movement is already defined, so that isn't the end of the word here. And then we times it by the speed. Again, I don't have to write a speed function to change the speed if it's on a wall or not. I can just go, hey, give me the speed, and it's done. If it is on a wall, then we lock the camera. The reason why we were locking the camera is when you're climbing in the game, if we didn't lock the camera, you'd be able to turn left and right and you'd move the player. Again, in a federal system, the movement system would have been a state machine. The state machine would have had it where the camera moved, but not the player, so on and so forth. But this Game Jam game kind of a rush job. A lot of this was just to get climbing actually working right in all the directions. So basically, if you're facing this way, the Y is going to be this. If you're facing this way, then the Y is going to be this, and so on and so forth. And then I change it to the climb animation, which is 1. Else, you're walking or running. We free the camera. We update the velocity of X and the velocity of E. We're not updating Y because you are not climbing. If you're running, we set the running animation. If you're not, you're walking. Theoretically, we could have done that in the speed, but that would have been a little excessive for the speed. So, like, when you do get speed, you expect to get the speed of the player. But if I said get speed also chooses what animation the player is playing, that's a little excessive. Even though it should theoretically know what animation it should be playing, getting the speed should not be deciding that. Why? Because maybe I'm gaining the speed for something else or something like that. And as such, I don't want to change the animation. Then if the movement velocity is 0, then we set the velocity to that and we're good. I think there was a weird... Nah, it wasn't in the movement, it was in the jump. Jump is kind of weird. So I had a lot of issues like getting players to move properly in the 3D world, and it was primarily because this is my first Godot 3D game. I did a Unity 3D game, but this was the first real 3D Godot game. So jump is on floor or is on wall. Then we add the jump velocity. And I think what was happening is we added to that, but if you somehow could like not jump, you could like store up your velocity. There was some weird way where you were gaining more velocity than any given point. So maybe this should have been capped somehow, where it would have been something like velocity dot y equals what is it? Clamp. I think we want a float, so we go velocity dot y plus jump velocity, and then the min could be negative. I don't know. So like that, I think that was the issue. Is like maybe I do max. So we get that, and at the most we get the jump velocity. I think that would have been better code, because then that would have stopped. If there was a way for you to build up that jump velocity, you would only ever get to the maximum jump velocity. Yeah, that would have been better code. Should have done that. But it was a late game bug that occurred, and it was I think 5-6 hours before the end of the game jam. So something to watch out on is plus equals. Plus equals is your friend and your enemy. Be careful. Also, equaling velocity was kind of complicated. This bit of code was a nightmare to code. I could have done a lot of better things just with knowledge that I have now and time. Move the X velocity, so this is, or move the X camera, which was up and down. if I remember right. So if the camera doesn't have focus, or if your mouse is in a different area, don't do anything. I despise games that do that. If I'm looking over here and like mucking around with OBS, I shouldn't see my camera like bouncing up and down with my mouse. Camera mount, rotation, .x clamp, and then we go camera mount rotation, take the Y, which I think I asked ChatGPT to review some of my code, and it kept going like, this is weird. You're saying X here, and you're saying Y here, and it's like, it's Y on the mouse, but I think it's X on the actual node. So, I don't know how to do that better. I think this makes perfect sense. Maybe this should be mouse movement Y. That would maybe have been a better name. But, yeah. Look sensitivity, fine. And then the min-max rotation, which is how high or how low you can look. Good. This is, again, so this is where the camera lock came in, is you can't look to the right and left while you're climbing. Degrees, .y, plus equals the look sensitivity. That could have been bad. Luckily, I don't think there's anything that stops that. So ultimately, you're not getting screwed over, but that could have easily been bad if there's a maximum. Plus, I think it will just rotate 180 or 360 degrees, and you'd be fine either way. So, apply gravity. I don't think there was really an issue on this. If the floor is not, take Y plus equals the gravity times delta, which is fine because that should be a negative anyways. Else, if Y is less than 0, 0 out once you're on the ground, then that is fine as well. We do that on the process frame. We do the inputs, though, on the process frame. So that could be problematic if you're looking for like physics interactions and stuff. That could have been maybe some cause issues as well. On area 3D push velocity. I have no clue what this is going to. And I see no entry point either, I don't think. Like generally there's like a little entry point for this, so am I calling this? Nope. Let's go search all the files real quick. Is there anything? I don't have a GD shader. Nope, this is dead code. Welcome to dead code land. I have no clue what push velocity did, and I have no clue what it would do. It's dead code. It's not good dead code because if I was to say, hey, this cloud has on change, go down to the player. Oh my gosh. Layer, there we go. Go here and I want to pick one. Oh, I actually don't see. Interesting. Why do I not see? Oh, there you go. I need to turn it off. Turn off compatibility mode. But if I had something that did this, I would be like, oh, on area 3D push, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Click. And then, I don't know what that code actually does. Of course, you shouldn't code that way. You should know what your code is doing and where it's going. But, if you were somebody who's like, that name looks exactly like what I'm looking for, this dead code is dead. But it's going to do something. If I remember right, what push velocity was going to do. Yes, I remember this. Back in the day, when I was developing this, we were going to have a snowblower that was going to push you. Like, project you somewhere. And I was trying to code up the on 3D push. That's where this dead code lives. And that's where it should always live. Negativity. And then the helper function. Was there any other files that anyone had interest in seeing? clickable credits. Pretty simple. You click on it, and when you click on it, I open up the URL. These are preset. The height progress thing. So if we go into the game real quick, when you start game, the progress bar is that thing on the left side where it's turning green and yellow. That was whoopsie. We're out of the game. Luckily, I feel like the stream is going to end soon, but that is where this bit of code was. It was relatively simple. It was kind of just setting up some things. It was actually 2 progress bars, if I remember right. Yeah. You had the current progress and the max progress. The current was your green and the max was your gold. That's how that was working. And yeah, it just was saying the maximum and all that. Nothing too fancy here. Some labels and stuff, but beyond that, that's fine. Pause menu was literally a margin container that could have been removed. That didn't need to be anything. I think I was trying to extend it. Spin, we already checked spin stuff. Oh yeah, the oasis in the game on the lower level, on the ground level, there's oases. I wanted on animation, so I created like this little script that on every frame, it would choose a target. It would try to go to the target height, and then on the target height, it would go up. Or sorry, if it has reached the target height, then it would randomize and choose a new target height. If it hadn't, it would try to slowly move towards the target height. That was that script. Split view. Oh, this was like a little pop-up thing that would pop up to show you your splits. If you guys want, I can quickly run through that code. This was important discovery is animation things have this bone map, which I don't know how to actually open. Is it in the inspector? No. I don't know how to open it anymore, but there's a way to open it, and you pick which bones map to what bones, and that helps you animate things. I think that is it. Cloud Ghost. I was trying to code a ghost. It never got to fruition, and it would never have gotten to fruition in the sense that I didn't have a deterministic game. So refresh button just refreshes the thing and adds a little 30-second timer. 30-second timer is because the API. The clock tower, I think, is just... no, this is the clock. This is just rotating the hands roughly in a good speed. That's rotating that. The helicopter is just rotating the blade, the back blade and the main blade. We checked the ward already. Nodes. These are just nodes, so we're good there. Those are FBXs, good there. Inputs, animation. So yeah, I think that is everything. And that is the game. I will give it code-wise, there was a lot of improvement. I would say it's like a 6 out of 10. There's a lot of style guides and design patterns I could have used. But again, game jams are short. And because they're short, a lot of things fall to the wayside, such as good game design principles. Or not even good game design, good code design principles, design patterns. And yeah, it wasn't readily available. It wasn't readily top of mind. So it wasn't what you use. So one of the things is this video and future sit-down lessons on my own of how to implement a state machine. I should be able to do that like the back of my hand, and that should be the plan I use. I shouldn't be going like, oh, this should be a state machine, but it's easier to do it this way. So that is that. Let's go to uh, Twitch. See who we are going into. I don't think there's anyone who I follow who does game design stuff. So if you're looking for more of that on the Twitch side, might not be the best place to go. If you're not looking for that, then maybe give some suggestions. Here are all the people I follow. If you have somebody you think is a better fit, just tell me and I'll head that way. I'll run through the quick list so that you know what we got. Bar Farm, it's a cat sanctuary with hundreds of cats. If you want to see cats, there's not really any audio or anything, but really nice just to have like in the background. Rude Gore is playing Phasmophobia. It's a scary ghost hunting game. Itchy Tasty is playing Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, if I remember right. That is a a zombie fighting game. Me Asian, by the way, is playing Breath of Fire 3, which is a classical RPG. And Meadows is playing Metrophobic, I do not know how to pronounce that, which is one of the more modern RPGs, along with McFlorezi, I don't know how to pronounce that either, playing Claire Obscure, which is a very popular modern RPG. Then we have Azure Han, who is playing Elden Ring, which is a RPG that is like fighting game, less turn-based. And then we have Ari Berserk, who is playing Baldur's Gate 3, which is also an RPG, more aligned with D&D. So anyone who's watching, is there anything you'd like to watch? If not, I hope you have a good rest of your day. I shall be playing, hopefully the last of Chrono Cross, which is another RPG, Saturday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you guys there. And then I don't know what we'll be doing after that, so you better catch that at least the end so that you know what is going on. Thank you all for attending. I think we are going to go to, I think we're going to go to Me Asian. Haven't been to Me Asian in some time. Yeah. There we go. And let's transition over there. And I hope you all have a good day. Let me cut on this audio so that you guys can hear it. Right?
No, yeah, no, maybe.
I don't hear it. Trying to do things, trying to get better. Yeah, I don't hear it.
Yeah,
But either way, with that, if you are on YouTube and you like the content, definitely hit the like button.
What it is.
There you go. Now I hear it. If you're on Twitch, I know you can't cheer, but I know you would if you could, so thank you very much. If you are on YouTube and you have not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, but also hit that bell button because YouTube sucks at notifying people. So if you want to actually be notified, you gotta do two actions. Twitch, on the other hand, loves notifying people. Very easy to be notified there. Just hit the little heart button or the follow button, and you'll follow me into the next stream whenever that happens. Until next time, hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. 4,
3, 2, 1.
Bye, guys.
I don't think I'll ever need this. So it's